Shalom, everyone. Tonight we are starting a new series, the weekly Torah Portion with Reb Shlomo Carlebach. This is the book that we are going to be using. It's called Evan Shlomo, like the Rock of Shlomo. And this is a book that Rabbi Shlomo Katz edited and compiled. And this is the book that we will be using. Here in Israel, later I can give you a number where you can get the book if you'd like. I'm still waiting for confirmation if it's on Amazon or not. Anyways, this is the book we'll be using. And while I have your attention, this Tuesday we also start a new series. This is called The Wandering Jew, Mystical, what is it called? Mystical Musings and Inspirational Insights by Rabbi Yitzhak Ginsburg. So this is also a brand new series that we're starting. Hopefully everyone will be able to take advantage. So since this is the first class, I have to admit that it might take a few weeks to get into a certain, call it a groove of how I want to try to give this over. These books are in English, and what I've decided more or less is instead of me just telling you what Reb Shlomo said, or on Tuesdays what Reb Ginsburg said, I want to, as much as possible, read from the text and then comment on it. Because I want you to hear their voice, not their voice to my voice. I will be commenting on it, and we will be going through many, many different insights. And so everyone knows that we do a discussion group afterwards. And so if you have what you want to discuss, so take a note or two, so you'll remember, because we'll be dealing with a lot of different ideas here. So we got to get started. Here we go. Now, usually most people, when they follow the Torah portion, they do it at Mincha of Shabbos. We're already reading the first aliyah of the next week's Torah portion. And so many people, that's how they do it, is from Shabbos to Shabbos. Once Shabbos is over, then we go to the next parsha. But there's another way that many, many people do it, and that is from Tuesday to Tuesday. What's the logic there? That puts Shabbos in the middle. So in other words, it's actually Wednesday to Tuesday. So in other words, many, many people will begin the new parsha on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Then you have Shabbos in the middle, and then continue learning that parsha on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. That's like a menorah in a certain way. You have three branches on one side. That's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The middle column of the menorah is Shabbos. And then the next 3 days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. We are mostly going to be doing from Shabbos to Shabbos. But here I want to begin with last week's parsha, because the first Torah that Reb Shlomo gives over ends with an introduction to this week's parsha. Last week's parsha was Parshat Shmini, which I'll explain in a minute. And the parsha, actually we have a double parsha this week, Tazria-Metzora. And they really go together. Not every year are they read together, especially in a year where you have a leap year. Sometimes they're read separately. But the subject material is very, very connected, these two parshas that we'll be dealing with tonight. But again, excuse me, we're going to begin in Parshat Shmini, because at the end he connects it to what he wants to say about Parshat Tazria. So, like I said, I'm going to read some, but it doesn't mean I'm going to read every single word. And truthfully, it will take me a few weeks to get into the flow to see how much time we have and how we could deal with the material. So Reb Shlomo begins, he calls this longing for the 8th day. Parshat Shmini, Shmini means 8, the 8th day. What is the context? For 7 days, Moshe put up and took down the Mishkan, the tabernacle, in preparation for its inauguration on the 8th day. So in the previous parsha, we talked about the 7 days, they're called the 7 days of Miluim, of filling. And then the 8th day, which was Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the tabernacle was put up permanently. Well, again, the Mishkan wasn't a permanent, it was a tent, but it was inaugurated for the first time on the 8th day. So Reb Shlomo says like this, everyone knows there are 7 days in a week. What's the 8th day? As much as we all want everything, do we know what we really want? We want something which we don't know about yet, something we have yet to taste. We have a feeling there is something in the world that we don't know of yet. I know that I need money in the bank. I need this more, I need that more. It's all very special. But here it says, Vayehi b'yom hashmini, and it was on the 8th day. The 8th day is not even part of the world. I'm longing for something and I don't know what it is. So here Reb Shlomo is trying to explain the idea of 8 in Jewish thought. 8 is always one beyond the cycle of 7. It represents, like in secular knowledge, the infinity sign is an 8 on its side, like this. And that's what 8 represents in Judaism also, one beyond. So here Reb Shlomo is commenting in general on what does it mean, and it was on the 8th day. Because really, the whole Mishkan was the idea of an 8th day, one beyond nature. That's why in Pirkei Avot, it says that there were 10 ongoing miracles in the Mishkan and later in the temple. In other words, different phenomenon that were not in the natural order of things. That's in Pirkei Avot. So here, Reb Shlomo, and I want to make a general statement here. Reb Shlomo's teachings are always very, very personal, psychological, spiritual, and tries to get to the essence of the neshama. And he does it in a very, very contemporary kind of language. In other words, many of these Torahs were taped from different classes that he gave. And these are the transcripts. So in many cases, he's sitting with a very, very broad spectrum of people and their knowledge of Torah. Some people knew hardly anything. Some people were Torah scholars. But he always talked in a very, very simple, down-to-earth, contemporary type of way. So he says, do you know what's happening in the world? We are looking for something special in all the wrong places. You know what the holiness of our children is? They are looking for the 8th day before they even know about the 7 days. They have this deep longing for something. Here, when he talks about children, he's talking about us. He's talking about all of us. He says they have this deep longing for something. They just don't know what it is. But you know what the Torah says? The Ribbon Sha'olam, the master of the world, has it for you. Don't run to Hollywood. Don't go to a discotheque. Don't run to India. It's here right for you. So here you can imagine this Torah, he might have been in front of like 100 hippies, and he's talking in a language that he feels that they can understand. So remember, this in Parshat Shmini is when Nadav and Avihu, two sons of Aaron, in the, call it the excitement of the inauguration, they took coals from the altar, put incense, and without being commanded, they went into the Holy of Holies, feeling that this would be the greatest thing that they could do for God. Here, this is one of the most deepest and complicated events in the whole Torah, even though it's given over in just a few verses. And yet, it has a tremendous impact on Jewish thought. So here, and the reason I'm bringing this is because he's going to bring this up in Parshat Tazria, which we're going to get to in this week's parsha. So he says like this, that here I'm not going to read directly, but Nadav and Avihu are these perfect examples of someone, there were two of them, who wanted something, and it was just right, it was beyond them. It was the number 8. It was the 8th day. They were longing for a connection with God that no one had ever shown them. And they just knew intuitively that there must be a deeper way to connect to Hashem. The problem was that they didn't ask permission from Moshe or their own father, Aaron, if this was the correct thing to do at this moment. They felt it was, but obviously what happened, they went into the Holy of Holies, and a fire came out from Hashem, and they were consumed. Their souls were consumed. Again, this is a very, very deep idea. But here, he's just bringing Nadav and Avihu as an example of this idea that we want something and we don't know exactly what it is. So now I'm going to continue to read from him. He says, take the whole generation of the 60s. They weren't looking for the 7th day. They were looking for the 8th day. And then Nebuch, they lost faith in the world, and they decided, okay, I couldn't find the 8th day. I certainly tried through drugs and all kinds of other religions. And many of them just, okay, I don't get the 8th day. And they kind of gave up. So he says, they said, okay, maybe there is no 8th day. Let's be happy with the 7 days. So Reb Shlomo says, nowadays, it's a little bit in the middle. Do you know why they were so angry at their parents? Remember, this was a generation of rebellion. There was a lot of rebellion of children against parents in all authority, because their parents never told them about the 8th day. If any of those kids would have talked to their parents about the 8th day, they would tell them to go see a psychiatrist, because the generation of the 60s, they were really searching for something deep, new, spiritual, and the older generation, remember Bob Dylan's song, the times they are changing. If you can't get out of the way if you can't lend a hand, because the times they are changing. So now at the end, and this is why I'm bringing it, he says, after Parshat Shmini comes Parshat Tazria. That's where we're going to be investing our energy the rest of this night, where a mother can't come to the Beit HaMikdash after birth. Now, the two parshas we're going to be dealing with tonight, Tazria and Metzorah, they're about this skin disease and how a person got it, why they got it, how it was treated, and how they were cleansed. Almost two whole parshas about this one thing. But the beginning of Tazria starts when a woman gives birth to a male child, and on the 8th day, that's the connection between Shmini, the 8th day. On the 8th day, you circumcise the child. But then it says that if it's a male child, so she becomes impure from birth, from the blood of birth for 7 days, and then another 33 days. And for a female child, she becomes impure for 14 days and another 66 days. In other words, double. 7 for a male and then 14 for a female, 33 for a male and 66 for a female. So that's just the context. So he says like this, and because she becomes impure, the Torah says explicitly that she could not come to the Beit HaMikdash. You can't go to the temple in Jerusalem in a state of impurity, a woman or a man. Anyone who's in a state of impurity, depending on what the impurity is, but in this particular case, a woman can't come for 40 days or 80 days. And that's what we're going to begin to discuss. So here he just says, I'll read it again. After Parshat Shmini comes Parshat Tazria, where a mother can't come to the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, after birth. Do you know what the mother is telling her children? Even if I can't go to the Beit HaMikdash right now, I could always go to the 8th day. The mother says to the child, look at me, come with me to the 8th day. In other words, what he's saying is when a woman gives birth, and we have to include the husband's experience also, they're touching what's called the 8th day. Because the whole process of birth is borders on miraculous. If anyone has kind of read the biology of what it takes for a safe birth, for a child to go through the 9 months and the birthing process, it borders on miraculous. And so Reb Shlomo is saying, so she gives birth, and now she can't go to the Beit HaMikdash. But she says to her child, is like, well, right now, the Beit HaMikdash is like the 7 days of the week. Right now, what we're experiencing is the 8th day. We're like one beyond. So then he says, children are compared to the 8th day. Children are kadosh kadoshim. Children are the holy of the holiest. A mother says, I don't care if I can't go to the Beit HaMikdash for a little while. I tasted the Holy of Holies when I gave birth. That's what will keep me going. So this is just a beautiful, in a certain way, introduction to our parsha of Tazria. Okay, so the first Torah in Tazria, he says like this, and he spends a long time in this, but he asks the simple question, when a woman gives birth, it's like the highest experience in the world. It's the most holy thing in the world. It's the most pure thing in the world. So how could it be that a woman becomes impure and she can't go to the temple for 40 or 80 days? It's not just Reb Shlomo asking this. All the commentaries ask, how do we understand what the Torah is commanding here? And of course, a question like this, there'll be many, many, many different answers. We're going to be learning Reb Shlomo's perspective on this. So he says, like, what's going on here? What are we being told here? So he says like this. He says, everything in life that we are working on is connected to fixing the tree of knowledge. The fixing of the world is not so much where I am trying to become holy because of you, of another person. You know what needs fixing? The part where I'm ready to become, as it were, unholy because of you, or meaning to go to the depths for another person. The downfall of the world began when Eve ate from the forbidden fruit. The fixing of the world began when Adam said to Eve, I'm ready to die because of you. So here, what is kind of missing in the context is this idea that after Chava ate from the tree, she realized that what God said before is, on the day that you eat it, you will die. So Eve took this literally. She had eaten from the tree. She now has a certain knowledge, and she's afraid she's going to die. So she turns to Adam and says, I'm afraid to die by myself. So Adam says, again, this is just one perspective. Adam said to her, okay, I'll eat from the tree also, and therefore we'll be on the same page together. So Reb Shlomo is saying, in a certain way, the beginning of the fall, or the unrectified state of humanity, began with eating of the tree. He said, but also the beginning of the fixing began when Adam was willing to go to the depths, even to death, to be with Chava. So he says, obviously, he didn't know how to do it, meaning to make the full tikkun. And we are still trying to figure this out. So he continues, what does it mean to be a good mother? Every mother is ready to say to her child, for you, I'll be holy. For you, I'll be holy. The question is, how much are you ready to become, as it were, unholy for your baby? How much are you ready to go to the lowest depths for your baby? Every parent is ready to be called by the principal of the school and hear, your son and your daughter is the greatest pupil we've ever had in our school. Every parent wants to hear that. But what about when you're called to the principal's office because your child is acting out, it hit someone, was disrespectful, whatever it is? Are you sticking with your child even when that happens? But imagine when everything goes wrong, how ready are you to go to help your child? So this is the idea that he's trying to give over here, is that, again, the whole idea is the woman becomes impure for 40 days or 80 days, and she can't go to the temple. And so he's trying to analyze, well, what's the lesson here? What are we being taught here? So he continues and he says, in the creation of a baby, there are three partners. This is from the Talmud. There's the husband, the wife, and God. There are three partners in the creation of a child. But in the birth itself, there are only two partners, the mother and God. Everyone is asking, why is it that Yiddishkeit depends on the mother? Because we know that according to Jewish law, a person is designated as Jewish or not according to the mother. So he's asking, why is it like that? Because as much as the father is a partner in creating the baby, when it comes to giving birth, it is only the mother and God. This is one of the main reasons why the Jewishness of the baby depends on the mother. That in itself is a beautiful insight. Then he says like this, is there anything more close that takes place for 9 months between two souls, more than a mother and her baby? You can be very close to a human being, but you can never be that close. You can be very close to another human being, but you each do your own breathing. I eat my food, you eat your food. Can you imagine how close a mother is to her baby when for 9 months they mamish share the same breath, eating the same food, the same everything? So listen what he says here. After 9 months, the mother is a little bit of a sinking ship after her baby is born. This closeness has suddenly stopped. The baby is outside now, is an independent being. And in a certain way, this closeness between mother and child for 9 months, which is what Reb Shlomo is saying is a unique experience that we don't have it at, no matter how close you get to another person. It's not that called intrinsic, essential unity. So he says a certain mourning takes place. Mourning meaning like after a person dies, that kind of mourning, over the deepest closeness in the world. What do we do when we mourn? It's called sitting Shiva. We sit for 7 days in a state of mourning. So he's saying, he's giving a deep reason here for the impurity of the woman. It's as if there's this separation, just like when the soul separates from the body, that's what we call death. So in a certain way, when the child is born, despite the holiness, the joy, the excitement, what the Torah is teaching us on a deep level, there's also a period of separation. Just like when someone leaves the world, they're now separated from the people who are left in the world. So he says, it's like the woman sitting Shivas when you are mourning the physical closeness that doesn't exist anymore. When it comes to birth, the person is still alive, but the closeness we are talking about doesn't exist anymore. So her impurity is because there's a little taste of death here. And some people explain that's why for a girl baby, it's a double period of impurity. Why? Because hopefully that girl will someday give birth also. And then will also experience this separation, which is a little bit like death. Now, when I first read this, when he says the mother is a little like a sinking ship, the first thing I thought of is what Reb Shlomo is describing here is what we call postpartum depression. Everyone know not every woman goes through this, but a very good percentage of women go through a depression. Most of it's explained that it's from hormones, which are very real, of course. That it's from hormones, the tremendous change in hormones. But Reb Shlomo is explaining this on a very, very spiritual way. What we would now call postpartum depression, he explains as this separation of this unity that existed for 9 months between mother and child. Then he says like this. So the mother is sitting some sort of Shiva, these 7 days of mourning, but it's not only because she is mourning the closeness that was, but she knows that sadly enough, this baby will one day leave the world too. So here he's adding even another deeper idea here, is that, of course, the joy of giving birth is so ecstatic and is such an important part of Judaism, of the home. But here he's saying there's also a reality that when you bring a soul into this world, that soul eventually will pass on to the next world as well. And so, you know what it's like? Breaking a glass at the wedding. Here, at the highest moment of joy, under the chuppah, the marital canopy, when it just, not just the groom and the bride, just all the hundreds of people who are there, everyone is just so happy. And then what do? We break a glass to remember the world is not completely fixed right now. Jerusalem isn't completely fixed. The temple is non-existent right now. And so we remember, Yerushalayim. If I forget Yerushalayim, let me forget my cunning, let me forget my right hand. So that's what Reb Shlomo is saying here, that at this highest moment of joy of giving birth, there's this a little bit, he's now explained it in two different ways, of a shadow of death. And that is being reflected in the woman becoming impure for these 40 or 80 days. Now let's keep things in perspective. 40 days and 80 days. It's not like the end of the world. There are men also, if you're impure from the impurity of death, you also can't go to the temple. And not just for 40 or 80 days. You can't go until you go through a whole procedure of the paraduma. So here, it's not just women who become impure, and it's not just women who can't go to the temple. But here we're just trying to understand, after giving birth, the idea of this period of impurity. So since he's talking about mother-child life and death, he says like this. Remember, Avram brings Yitzchak as an offering, and a Kedah Yitzchak, he's bound to the altar. And right after that it's in Parshat Vayera, right after that is Parshat Sarah, where first thing we hear is Sarah dies. So all the commentaries make a connection between Sarah's dying and different versions of what she heard about Avram bringing her son as a possible offering. So Reb Shlomo says like this, at that moment when Yitzchak was lying on the altar, our mother Sarah was ready to die. That means that a Jewish mother means two things. On the one hand, she mamish gives life to the baby, but she is also willing to die for the baby. Why did Sarah die at the moment of Yitzchak being on the altar? Because she said, if someone has to die, let it be me. Let it be me. So at that very instant, when the baby is born, the mother says to God, listen, if someone chas v'sholom has to die, let it be me. Very, very deep ideas here. He goes on a little bit. He says the whole thing of Yiddishkeit is to be ready to die for God 1,000 times. What's the holiness of the first Jewish baby, Yitzchak? He was ready to die for God. In the craziest, deepest way, whenever a Jewish baby is born, at that very instant, since the mother is ready to die for the baby, and the baby is learning from the mother how to have Mesirat Nefesh for God. That's how the child learns to be willing to give everything for God, even one's life. Then he ends this particular piece by saying, a father can give over to a baby what to do, what to eat. It's all cute and sweet. It doesn't compare to the teaching the mother gives to the baby at the moment when the baby is born. Okay. One second. So now he says like that. Again, it's impossible to read all of this, to go over every single one. So if you remember, one second. He goes back to Nadav and Avihu, because there's this deep connection between the 8th day when Nadav and Avihu went into the Holy of Holies, thinking that what they were doing was the greatest thing in the world. In one hand, I didn't mention this before, right after they die, so Moshe turns to Aaron and says, I understood that on the day that the Mishkan would be inaugurated, there had to be a sanctification of God's name. I thought it would be through you or me. Now that I see what Nadav and Avihu have done, I see that they're greater than both of us. It's a very, very important teaching, because it's very paradoxical. The whole story of Nadav and Avihu are very paradoxical, because according to the rabbis, the Torah itself, they were consumed by God in a fire. And it's even called, they brought a strange fire. And some say it was because they drank wine before they went in. Some say it was because they weren't married. Some say they didn't show enough respect to their father and their uncle, Moshe, and they didn't ask permission to do this. And so obviously something went wrong here. Nonetheless, Moshe turns to Aaron and says, now I see they're greater than us. So that's the paradox here. On one hand, what they did was the idea of the 8th day. They went beyond. They were willing to even give up their lives to be close to God. On the other hand, God wants us in the world. We're supposed to be here and serving God and making the world a better place, not leaving this world if we don't have to. So he says like this. He says, was Mount Sinai the highest thing in the world? Sure it was. It was the highest thing in the world, but only until that time. Because after Mount Sinai, the connection had to get even higher. We made the golden calf because Mount Sinai wasn't enough anymore. It was time for Moshe to bring down the tablets, but suddenly they felt so empty. We needed more than that. In order to fill our hearts, we needed something new, something which never existed before. Remember how we started the evening where Reb Shlomo said, all of us, The idea of the eighth day is everyone feels intuitively that there's something beyond me that I have to reach. I don't even know what it is. But this intuitive feeling that there's something else I have to achieve, something else I have to strive for, I have to reach, I have to experience. So right after, so Reb Shlomo continues, and he says like this: what did we do after the forgiveness of the golden calf? After the golden calf, so Moshe goes back to the mountain for 40 days and then another 40 days. And God gives forgiveness. And the sign of the forgiveness is building the Mishkan, to make a place for God in this world. The Mishkan is the sign from God that the people are forgiven. But Nadav and Avihu thought on the day that the Mishkan is being inaugurated, well, what will happen after that? Will the people experience the Mishkan and then after a year or two kind of get bored with it? This is actually, it happens that, let's say, someone is brought up religiously, but at a certain point, it's just rote and routine, and they fall away from it. Or someone who's a Baal Tshuva, who begins with tremendous excitement, but after a few years, it becomes rote and routine also. So Reb Shlomo is saying that Nadav and Avihu were afraid that just like after the giving of the Torah, the people felt empty and they tried to fill it with the golden calf. Moshe didn't come down from the mountain. Now what do? We need something else. So they were afraid in a certain way that after the Mishkan would be the central place, well, what's going to happen after that? So they wanted to go into the Holy of Holies as a way of showing that everyone needed to go in what's called the Holy of Holies within each person. So then Reb Shlomo says like this, he brings a Torah from the Mea Shiloach, one of his favorite commentaries, who said that before King Solomon became king, he learned the secrets of the portions of Tazria and Metzora. That's already a gate opening Torah. Why did he do so? Why would King Solomon, before he built the temple, study this parsha of Tazria and Metzora? So he says like this: we know that everything we are doing in this world is to correct the sin of Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve. Tazria, our parsha, is the most unbelievable fixing in the world. Why? How does it start? It says the first fixing is Isha ki Tazria v'yalda zachar, a woman who gives birth to a male child. He says this is the fixing of Chava. Why? Chava brought death into the world. We were technically supposed to live forever. By eating from the Eitz Hadat Tov V'Ra, it brought death in the world. So every time that a woman gives birth, this is a woman's contribution to trying to fix the sin of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So he says that's one of the secrets of Tazria. And in the next parsha of Metzorah, we learn about, and the verse says, Adam ki yeh be'or b'saro, a man who has in his skin and then this skin disease. But here the word Adam is used. There's 4 different words in the Torah, when it wants to talk about a male, Adam, Ish, Enosh, and Gever. 4 different ways that a male can be addressed. The highest is Adam. And usually when Adam is used, there's a deeper teaching and some connection to the first Adam. So here, Reb Shlomo is saying that Parshat Tazria is the fixing of Eve, of women, or the beginning, and Adam, who will explain later, why does it say an Adam who has the skin disease? So he says, why suddenly here in the middle of Vayikra does the fixing of Adam and Eve take place? We usually think of Vayikra has to do with the tabernacle, has to do with the Levites, has to do with the Kohanim, the priests, and the service. Here, all of a sudden, the various commentaries, because Reb Shlomo is pulling from scores of different commentaries. And the commentaries are saying, and Reb Shlomo is emphasizing, that there's a secret type of fixing of the sin of Adam and Chava in these parshas that we're reading. So he says like this. It says because when it's talking about Nadav and Avihu, it says, Bikaravas tam lifnei Hashem v'yamutu. When they came close to God and they died. So he points out that last week's Parshat Shmini, then we have Tazria-Metzora, and then afterwards we have Parsha Achrei Mot, which is after the deaths of Nadav and Avihu. So our parshas are like sandwiched in by the incidents of Nadav and Avihu. And so he's trying to make a connection between what Nadav and Avihu at least thought that they were contributing to the world and the fixing that women who give birth are making. And here we haven't gotten yet to explaining about this skin disease. And we'll get to it right now. Okay. I wish we had all night, but we don't. Okay. Okay, so now we're told in the Gemara, there are many, many different reasons why a person would get this skin disease. One of the things we learn about it is that it's considered that a person would get the skin disease for spiritual reasons. That even though the English translation is almost always leprosy, all of the commentaries for millennium have been pointing out that this particular skin disease was not leprosy. It was not brought by physical factors. And the one that they pick out of all of them that's most associated why a person would get this skin disease is by speaking Lashon Hara, by speaking evil about other people. So this is what Reb Shlomo says. He says, we are always trying hard to see the good in people. We are trying so hard to say to each other that the world is beautiful. But then someone comes to you and says, you're not realistic. Do you really think the world is so good? It isn't that simple. Sometimes you say about people, wow, they are so holy and beautiful. And then someone comes and says to you, let me tell you what they did last night. And let me tell you what they are planning on doing tomorrow. What's so good about them? What are you going to answer? So he says like this. He says, let me tell you something. Why is talking evil talk, lashon hara, the most terrible thing in the world? He says simple. He says it's because it's the hardest thing to refrain from. So he says, when I pass by a treif restaurant, meaning a restaurant that's not kosher, I never, he's saying in the word I, but he's talking about people. He says, I never had the slightest urge to go and eat some shrimp. I never had to force myself not to go to a non-kosher restaurant. I don't need it. I don't want it. I never even had a yetzer hara, an evil inclination, to jump into a taxi on Friday and go to a bar. But when it comes to lashon hara, something else happens to me. Again, he's talking about everyone. So then he quotes from a Hasidic Rebbe. It was called the Holy Zilichover. The Zilichover says about his own father. He says, I want you to know 3 things about my father. He never ate without 10 people, meaning that he always brought guests, especially the poor, to make sure that everyone had what to eat. But that is something I can also do. My father woke up at midnight every night and said Tikkun Chasod. He said certain prayers for the destruction of the temple. But I can do that also. But the third thing was that not only did my father never speak lashon hara, he also never spoke about people, period. That third level I never reached. I don't know how I could possibly do that. Here, Reb Shlomo is just pointing out that speaking negatively about other people, he says it's like the hardest thing in the world not to do. And it's something that we're all guilty of at different times. We might try not to, but it's very rare, extremely rare, for someone who never speaks negatively about other people. And again, this is the reason that we're told, the main reason why a person got this skin disease. So listen what he says. I look out at the world, and there is always something wrong with the world. There is something wrong with people. The truth is, if you see what is wrong in the world, it means you can fix it. Sometimes it's hard to believe, but it's mamish true. If I wouldn't be on the level to fix when I see something wrong in a person, I wouldn't even see it. God only lets you see something wrong if you can fix it. Now, for those who are part of our Baal Shem Tov series, this is basically a teaching from the Baal Shem Tov, but Reb Shlomo takes it one step further. The Baal Shem Tov taught that a person never sees or experiences anything in the way life plays itself out if there wasn't something that they needed to learn from this, and that was something that they had to fix. And the famous story that is brought is the Baal Shem Tov, when he was walking home from shul Friday night, and we can imagine they had an ecstatic, joyous Kabbalat Shabbat. On the way home, he saw 2 Jews fighting with each other, yelling and insulting each other. And the Baal Shem Tov, his first reaction is, what did I possibly do wrong? What do I have to fix that I had to see this? In other words, his first reaction was, if I didn't have something to fix in myself, I never would have been exposed to this. So Reb Shlomo, though, is taking it even in a certain way one step further, that if we see wrong in the world, it must mean that God is allowing us to see what's wrong in the world in order that I should try to fix it. Now, do we always do that? No. We see lots of wrong in the world, and maybe we even say to ourselves, I wish I could fix this, or what could I do to fix this, but maybe don't do anything. So Reb Shlomo is saying something very, very strong here about, we'll call it divine providence, is that if you see wrong in the world, it means that God is sending you a message that you should try to fix it. So then he says like this, we are coming to the Holy Land, and there is so much wrong in Israel. If there would be nothing wrong anymore, what would we be doing? What would be so special about coming here? So he says, yes, there is wrong, but we need to fix it. Now, this is the whole thing with the spies. The spies come, and they come back with this incredible fruit. It was so large, they had to put it on poles and be carried by two people. The grapes, the bunch of grapes were so huge, you needed two people to carry them. And yet, they saw everything wrong. And instead of saying, it's not going to be so easy, but we can do it. Or we saw things that really needed correcting. Let's go in and let's correct it. Their conclusion was, we shouldn't go there at all. We're not on the level to fix it. We're not on the level to conquer the land. We ended up in the desert for 40 years because of that. So he says, the thing about us Yidden is that we have the privilege of building Yerushalayim. After it's rebuilt, the Ribono Shel Olam, the master of the world, can say, thank you so much. Now we've done something. Gaval, what a privilege. In the same way we have to build Yerushalayim, we have to rebuild Yidden. Gaval, we have to rebuild Yidden. So here he's saying that there might be wrong in other people. There might be wrong in the world. There might be wrong in Eretz Yisrael. But do we have to talk about it all the time? Do we have to shove it down people's throats? Or do we just go about our business and try to fix it in any way that we can? Okay, I'm going to get through two more ideas here. I guess I can find it. Sorry. No. Okay, so now he says like this. He wants to get to the core of why people speak negatively about other people. So just because we're running out of time here, so he says like this. So again, the idea is, it says when an Adam has in his skin this skin disease. So the question is, why does it say Adam and not just Ish? A man, but it uses Adam. And the Torah doesn't use Adam that often. So he says like this. According to our tradition, and he quotes the Zohar, a human being is called by 4 names. Adam is the most exalted name for a human being. The deepest question in the world is, how could it be that the Torah tells us that this Adam, the highest aspect of a person, is the one who's saying bad things about other people? How do we understand that? So he quotes the Mei HaShiloach, who says that this Adam is the one who has a very big soul and wants something so much, greater, like we've been talking about all night, the eighth day. This is why Adam is the same letters as the word ma'od. Ma'od means very much. So Adam is Aleph, Dalet, Mem, and Ma'od is the exact same letters, just in a different order. Mem, Aleph, Dalet. So he says, and Adam wants something more, like as we've been talking all night. So he says, if I want something so much, and if it doesn't happen, Gewalt, do I get angry inside? If I want something a little bit and it doesn't happen, it's okay that it didn't happen. That's when it's I wanted something little and it didn't happen, okay. But what happens if something I want really a lot and it doesn't happen? It says most people crack up when they want something very, very much and it doesn't happen. If they want something and it didn't happen, the disappointment isn't so great. So he says, so do you know who it is who's saying bad things about other people? It's Adam. He wanted something so badly, and when it didn't happen, he's angry at every person in the world. So what is his fixing? He has to go sit outside the camp. So here, we didn't touch on this yet. When a person has this skin disease, he goes to the Kohen, and he has to go outside of the camp. And he lives in isolation until the skin disease begins to heal, and then he can come back into the camp. So, of course, there's a lot written about this whole idea that the fixing for a person who's saying bad things about other people, obviously they need a fixing. And part of the fixing is, well, if you don't like other people, you only see negative things about people, so go outside of the camp by yourself and see how you like that. That's the basic idea. But what Reb Shlomo is getting to here is, why do we say negative things about other people? What is happening inside of us that we have to say bad things about other people? So he's again, this is just one perspective. He's saying that a person who's saying bad things about another person is because there's this deep-seated anger, just in general, because I didn't get what I wanted. And the ego, when the ego isn't fed properly, it can get very nasty. And so really, a lot of the time, we're not even angry at the other person. We just have this dull, non-descriptive anger within ourselves, maybe at God, maybe at ourselves, that we haven't accomplished what we want to accomplish. And so what do I do with that? I take it out on other people. I say negative things. I say caustic things. I say sarcastic things. Is because it's something deep inside myself that really needs the fixing. Okay. There's only so much we can do in one evening. I hope people, we all got a taste. This was not easy because it's a double parsha, and I was also drawing from last week's parsha. to try to explain this week's parsha. But just to review here, there's a theme running through all of this that connects it, this idea of this kind of experience or wanting an experience beyond the ordinary. That's what Nadav and Avihu wanted, something beyond the 7 days. And the Mishkan and the temple itself is beyond the 7 days. That's why you had 7 days of, call it rehearsal, to put up and take down the Mishkan before we put it up on the 8th day. And then we connected this idea of wanting something more with the experience of giving birth. And then we connected that same idea with the idea that it's an Adam who gets this skin disease, because when we want something so much and we don't get it or we can't accomplish it, then we get frustrated and we get angry and we take it out on other people. Everyone knows that in family dynamics, usually the people that we dump on the most are the people we love the most. For some reason, we feel we wouldn't do that with a stranger. But somehow, if we have some emptiness inside, that ma'od, that very much has not been satisfied, then we take it out on other people. And finally, we learned this whole idea of the different reasons why a woman would become impure after the miraculous, joyous event of giving birth. And there we saw a number of different perspectives that would help us understand the 40-day and the 80-day state of impurity, which again was a temporary state, but how it touched on the different ideas of a little shadow of death that accompanies the birth. And we use the example of breaking a glass at the wedding. So we should be blessed to continue to learn the Torah and to learn only to say positive things, God willing.